Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to open up the 6 p.m. School committee meeting for the purposes of going into executive session. So at this time, I will take a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Motion made by Tara.
Second.
Seconded by Kerry. And we will take a roll call vote to go into executive session. Ted?
Yes.
Kerry?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Yes.
Tara, yes. And Dan, yes. Back shortly. 2025 school committee meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask to join us to stand in the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of members. We'll start on this end with us.
Ted Nobio, Millville.
Carrie Goddett, Blackstone.
Matt Catalano, Millville.
Chuck Dunton, Blackstone.
Tara Scobie, Blackstone.
Dan Keefe, Blackstone.
Joseph Spagna, Director of Finance and Operations.
Jill Pilagalarani, Assistant Superintendent, Director of Student Services.
Caitlin Juba, Student Representative, Blackstone.
Maya Gagne, Student Representative, Blackstone.
And Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
And now we'll move to an update from our student representatives.
All right, so to start us off, students in the performance lit class performed a play in front of the entire school the day before holiday break, and it was called The Elf on the Shelf Must Die. And also on that day, students decorated their advisories doors with their pep rally themes. So the seniors have the United States, the juniors have the United Kingdom, sophomores have Greece, and freshmen have Canada. And on the topic of pep rally, classes are working hard to craft their banners and create their lip sync routines for pep rally, which will be held next week on Friday the 17th. And also next week is Spirit Week. So each day the number of participants will be counted, and that will count towards pep rally points.
BMR's winter sports are in full swing with our girls and boys basketball teams, indoor track, swim co-op with Grafton, and hockey co-op with Bellingham, all been having practices and games lately. Our National Honor Society has also been hard at work preparing bowls for the annual Empty Bowl Dinner, which will take place this coming March. It's a pretty interesting process. So students have to schedule either charger time or come after school, and they design their own bowls, and you'll get to see all of them at the dinner. I'm also going to come to you with a student council update. Our STUCO has been preparing to attend the Winter Day of Service by the Central District of the Massachusetts Association of Student Councils on February 1st, which will occur at Maynard High School at tentatively 12 or 1. The CD board will be meeting this weekend to decide the time. And we are also preparing to attend the MASC annual conference, state conference in Hyannis this year, and preparations for that have also begun. Our mock trial team also has their first scrimmage this Saturday, praying it doesn't get snowed out, but mock trial team's first scrimmage will be this Saturday at Malden Catholic High School, and the first competition will be this coming Wednesday on the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's great. Nice work.
Great rest of your evening.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to consent agenda A, warrants. Take a motion to accept the warrants.
So moved.
Motion made by Tara,
Second.
seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And accept the minutes of December 12th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion made by Tara,
Second.
second by Carrie. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is public forum. Anybody wishing to speak can come to the table, and there is a 3-minute time limit for each individual.
Let me just start by saying
I have the utmost respect for every educator and anyone that serves the youth, no matter what city or town, and I have a great respect for
I
all
don't
you
mean to
folks
interrupt,
as
but
well.
can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Gino Elias. I have two children in the school, one in fifth grade and the other in third. I just wanted to start by saying that the conversation that took place at the last month meeting regarding the wellness curriculums, I wanted to share some thoughts. I often say that perception is 99% of reality in a lot of ways. And when I looked at that video, there was a few statements that really stood out to me, and one of them was when it was talked about, we changed it because we agreed with you, and that was reference to not including parents as a trusted person. And it kind of set off a bell in my head that the DESE guidelines must allow for some type of changes, because we made a change, or the people tasked with making changes made that change to include. And it sounds like they heard you guys loud and clear, because they changed it. But then I also want to talk a little bit about the repeated emphasized statement that families can opt out. And that was a major push I felt as getting this approved. But the caveat to it, and what troubles me as a father, is that when my son, who may or may not opt out, has to go and sit separately or do something differently, that the educator will have a private conversation with my child to explain why. And if I'm opting my kid out, I will have that conversation with my child. So I'd like to know what that messaging would be, if we could provide some clarity on what that universal message would be to kids from the educators. Because they're not going to understand. They're going to know they're not with their friend in the classroom. But then, you go on to it, and again, I think words matter, and you sit here and you look at things, and I pick up on certain things at times, and one of the other things I was said was like safeguards in place to cover us, because we know how communication at home can be. Not I know how it can be, it's we, so it's a shared philosophy, I guess, or bad words, but it was met with a little bit of agreeing and chuckling. And I don't find anything funny. I think the worst thing that has happened to our communities across this country is broken families. And it's not to be made light of. Like, we should be saying, how do we tackle those problems? And I know that's not your problem. I get that. But we should, when we talk about trust and building that trust and things of that nature, we should really be conscious of the fact that, there are a lot of people, and I would say the majority of the families that live in this town have conversations with their kids. They're good parents. We're not perfect, but to have that kind of stereotype kind of put on you in a broad brush, maybe, that somehow we fit that mold is just something I ask that you guys take into account when maybe having these public forums, because, again, when I talk about perception, it makes you want to reach for the worst. And I don't want to reach for the worst. I want to think that this was well thought out, that this discussion that was had to come up with this curriculum was well thought out. I want to believe that. But to determine what's best for our kids and go beyond the academics parts and how it's delivered and how to explain it to our children, I felt in my mind it wasn't really solution-based, but more divisive-based. Because it's really pitting one against the other in a lot of ways. My son goes into his side, this kid goes into this side. Well, why can't you learn about this? And I'm really focusing on the 7, 8, and 9, and 10-year-olds. Like, how do you even have that conversation between your buddy who you might play with on the basketball team? Like, somehow I don't care about what you're learning. I feel like it brings more divisiveness than anything in a lot of ways. And we know that DESE makes recommendations, and we know, like, we heard mandatory, and that's fine. Is it mandatory? I don't know. I don't even know, because I didn't do enough research on it, because I kind of got this today, and a little bit taken back by it, a little upset over it. But my understanding is you can refuse and you can make changes because you guys made changes. You added trusted persons, and I'd like to know if you did have the ability to make changes. And what was determined here was what the educators wanted to teach in this curriculum. Or was it mandatory? Like they had no say in it. And that's fine. If it, I just like to have that answer. And then we also heard about discussions about these, it'll be age appropriate, 10 minutes, 10-minute conversations, topics. Just the topics alone are controversial. They're political. They have no place, in my opinion, that a 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old can somehow try and digest this in their mind to comprehend what we're trying to make them understand. Now, I was hoping it was like, maybe this is more geared toward kindness and teaching kids to be good human beings, a productive part of society. And I think that can be accomplished. I just don't know at a 7, 8, and 10-year-old level that they can't even comprehend violence. They can't comprehend a family separating, a loved one dying in 10 minutes. So to say, and use terminology of the assignment of being a male or female at birth, could that have just been changed a little bit? Do they even know what that means? And then when we teach it, it's who says that's right? That's the great debate. That's what everyone fights about. And that's a conversation that can be had amongst adults and people voting for political people. Because at the end of the day, whatever our kids learn and whatever we have to swallow is based on our elected representatives. They go and they will dictate policies, right? So I think that's why politics and religions is bad for schools to begin with. But I want to close with this. If changes could have been made, and this was the want of the educators and you folks that voted for it, I might not like it, right? But I respect your opinion and what you decided. But be clear as to how you came to that decision. And we don't all have to agree. There's no problem with disagreeing or me not agreeing with all of it. But I feel like this wasn't completely transparent, and I think that changes could have been made. I think you guys took a document that was guidelines, pushed it as mandatory. Everything within it was mandatory. And I believe that just wasn't the case. And I don't expect you to answer that, but if you could provide some clarity, that'd be great. Other than that, I mean, look, I respect all the educators here, everything that you do, and I may not agree with this particular objective, but I think you guys do well by our children. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the board under public forum? Thank you, Gino. Oh,
Do I need to introduce myself? You guys know who I
yes,
am.
you do.
I'm Chris Moran. I understand that kids need to know what's right and wrong from touching perspective. I get that. My 7-year-old does not care who is sleeping with who at home. She doesn't care if someone has 2 moms or 2 dads, 1 mom, 1 dad, or a heterosexual couple. She doesn't care. She doesn't know. My boys don't care if pink is girls. My girls don't care if blue is boys. There's no gender role there. Anything can be for anyone. My daughter plays with G.I. Joes. She plays with Matchbox cars. She plays with Barbies. She wears blue. My boys wear pink. Nobody cares. They want to play. They want to be kids. Putting this on them is complete bull. It's unnecessary, and it shouldn't be happening at all. It should have been brought up to the parents to be able to fight it and argue about it and question it. And we shouldn't have to come here like this because it was something that was sent home as a permission slip, which you pointed out was not even required. The phys ed teachers did that to let us know. You didn't even have the decency to do it yourselves. Okay? You took religion out of schools.
we're gonna-
But no, you
no,
took
no,
religion out of
we-
schools.
I understand your passion about this, but I don't want to direct it at any individual, and if you're gonna direct it, you can direct it at me as the chairman.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just don't want to.
You didn't send anything home. You weren't going to. If an opt-out
The-
form and a permission slip wasn't sent home.
The school committee made it clear that we were sending things. That was one of the policies, one of the members of the school committee did make sure that that was going home. An opt-out policy was part of that discussion. You can come up to the table if you want to address the committee.
So I don't think that you guys went about this the right way. It should have been, you have building committee meetings about a new school. Meeting after meeting after meeting, you have parents coming, asking questions, you have public forums, this and that. You can't do that when you're trying to teach my 7-year-old about this. It's not okay. It's not okay at all. I have 2 kids I already pulled out of this district. 2. I have 1 left. You need to focus on academics and not this. Our academic numbers are terrible. They're a disgrace. I have 2 kids that went to a different district that are excelling. Excelling now. You can shake your head all you want, Mr. DeFalco. It's fact. They're my kids. I saw their report cards, I saw the comments, and I'm seeing them now. Do better. These are my kids.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? I thank you for coming and expressing your concerns. And I'll just add to Mr. Ola's point, addressing your grievances to the elected bodies also does impact change. So I appreciate the time that people take to come and address their grievances, and their voices are being heard. It's also not an easy thing to do on your end as well. So I thank you, everyone, for attending for this issue. We're going to move on to
Chair, I have a point of order. Can we reconsider the vote from the 12-12 meeting based on, so we can maybe open it up to more discussion for more of the community?
that would have to go on an agenda item. It could have been reconsidered that evening.
Okay.
In my understanding of it, once the meeting's closed out,
Okay.
it can go on a future agenda item if that's what you're getting at.
I'd ask for it to be on the February 13th agenda. If that's, I think it's February 13th.
February 6th.
February 6th, sorry.
February 6th? I will put that
Thank you.
for discussion and reconsideration on February 6th.
I think it's just important if we're having discussion with our community and they feel as though that they're getting this and not having enough time to review it, maybe we give them some more time and then, we can entertain their opinions and their voice and then we can re-vote on this.
Sure.
Thank you.
So that will be reviewing or reconsidering a motion, there'll be an agenda item to reconsider the curriculum on February 6th with this body.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question for that?
Issue, yes.
For that discussion on the reconsidering, would you be able to provide us, Dr. DeFalco, the dates when, because I know we voted in December.
Yep.
But emails had already been sent home
Yes,
with the frameworks and whatnot, right?
Yep, we notified families in October. We actually sent out the standards, we sent out all the changes in the health curriculum, we posted it on our website. Yeah, there was quite a bit of communication. We've been working on this for about 18 months. I know we've talked to the committee about it a few times. We've had the staff in front of us a few times. So yeah, I'm happy to bring all that data.
Thank you.
And the school committee policy
Thank you.
that
That's what I,
the policy subcommittee put in place was that we will communicate when there is any topic of this nature with any family not only communicate, but give them all the materials, resources, PowerPoints, lesson plans, worksheets, videos. So that's exactly what we did. That was put in place by the policy subcommittee, which is Mr. Catalano, Ms. Scobie, Ms. Finaco, and myself, and approved by the entire committee. So we've been really far ahead of this, making sure that the communication's been clear.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to school committee portion of the agenda to declassify executive session minutes for July 8th, 2024, August 19th, 2024, and October 10th, 2024. I'll take a motion to approve those or declassify. A motion made by Tara,
Second.
seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to MSBA update, Mr. Superintendent, or Tara.
Superintendent, please.
You want me to do? Yep. So we have some really good news. As the committee and the community is aware, we have been working diligently on our feasibility study process. We were in the module of forming our project team, which is module 2. First was our OPM selection, which we did in the early fall. And most recently, we have selected our designer for the feasibility study. We unanimously moved forward. By unanimously, I mean the Designer Selection Committee and the Mass School Building Authority moved forward with DRA, Drummy, Roseanne, and Anderson. That name might sound familiar. That is the architecture firm that actually did our master plan back in, I think it was 2019. So they've been fairly active in our community before, meeting with various stakeholders, parents, students, staff, working with our municipalities. They were the group that helped us submit our statement of interest. So we are very pleased. We just signed our contract. School Building Committee approved it on December 30th. I signed it yesterday. And we had our kickoff meeting yesterday afternoon where we outlined all of the work that is in front of us over the next few months. That work includes meetings with principals, meetings with teachers, support staff, meetings with students, meetings with our community, our community members, our parents, our families, to collect a lot of feedback around what the educational plan can look like for our students and our towns moving forward. So lots of good work is in front of us. We will be notifying the community very soon of the first community forum regarding the feasibility study, which we think at this point will be either the first or second week in February. So lots of work happening between now and the spring to get the feasibility study done and in place. So we're really excited about that. And in your packet this evening is the slide deck that we reviewed with the School Building Committee on December 30th that reviewed the whole designer selection process and what was necessary in order to land on DRA. This also, we have a very active website. If you haven't been on it, you should check it out. We have a school building committee. It's right there on the main page. I think it's titled as High School Project, but you can click on that link. We have all of our agenda, our minutes, our PowerPoints, all things school building committee that you could be interested in or want to know about, all the Mass School Building Authority modules, where we are in that pipeline. So lots of great information there, and we're very pleased to be at the stage where we are.
All right, very well. Any questions with that update? Good. Policy Subcommittee updates. Review and approve policy section A. And do we have any, Matt?
Yeah, so you'll find in your packets, we start from A and work our way through Z of the existing policy, and just updating it based on, the recommended policy versus any changes. Really, there's very little in A that is a big change. There's no real big changes. You can see on policy AC, I think is the biggest change where they've asterisked the word race, individuals on the basis of race, and put some context, further context to that, to kind of expand what race means. So we're just looking to adopt that. And this is based, so if you look at it, it says race to include traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture, hair type, hair length, and protective hairstyles. This is in response to a recent case that was decided. I know you have more details, Jason, about the
Yeah, it
actual
was the
case.
It's called the Crown Act.
Correct. Other than that, we didn't find any changes to our existing policy, so we're just going to ask to, have a vote to accept it as is.
Make a motion to accept the review, the amendments to policy section A.
Motion made by Tara,
Second.
seconded by Kerry. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next will be policy JJF, student activities account.
I'd like me to take that. This is the student activity accounts that we discussed in a prior meeting with the strikeout language that's there and the new language that's added. The main focus of this change is to update how we're processing funds that are used for our student activities that are handled by at each of the schools. It's going to move from check basis at the schools to having to follow the warrant process in the district and allow for some fiscal oversight that we have to kind of apply to these funds. One thing we did add to this is a section for petty cash, which is another policy that's coming up following this because of the concern that some of these groups need access to cash for the nights of their programs or whatever they're doing. So we have a plan in place to make sure that there is availability for those cash needs at the time. In doing this, we'll be consolidating. There are 7 different bank accounts right now, 2 at the high school, 2 at the middle school, and 1 at each of the elementary schools, or former elementary schools. This will consolidate all that cash into one account. And then once that one account's set up and we come to our balances, each club will be set up in our system with its own financial statements. So if it's a drama club or whatever the club is, they have a cash balance that's recorded in the system, the portion of the cash that's held at the bank account that's theirs, and they'll be able to see what's expended, where, when, why, and how, and everything will be there. They can actually be able to run their own financial statements at the end of the year if they'd like to see that. Because a lot of the questions I got when I first got here was, where's our money? Well, I can't tell you that because I don't have the checkbook. So now it'll all just be in our system. We'll have the fiscal oversight. They'll have access to the cash they need for their programs, and they'll also be able to go into the system and see exactly what's available to that club at any given time and what the deposits were and what the expenditures were.
Very good. Any questions?
Sure. You always look so apologetic.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. That's-
On 2.3,
Yes.
it says it has to be distributed by the district accountant. Say that
We're
person.
not on, you're looking at the
am
petty
I?
cash policy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I'm
next.
jumping ahead.
Yeah, just, yeah.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I did the same thing.
Now I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve policy JJF, student activities account.
So moved.
Seconded by, motion by Chuck, seconded by Kerry. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
And with that, Mr. Chair,
Excuse me?
could I also request that at this point in time, we do an approval to consolidate the 7 accounts into the one? Because that should be the next document that looks like this in your packet. And it's listing out each of the 7 accounts that there are.
Yes.
And stating that we'll consolidate this into one account called student activities.
Yeah, that one.
Take a motion to consolidate the accounts.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion made by Tara Locken, seconded by Kerry. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
I do.
All right, now we'll move on to the petty cash policy.
So this is a continuation of what we just talked about. I've come to find out as I've worked through this process that there's petty cash needs. There's cash needs for these kids. There's cash needs for some departments. We tried to weigh out what options we have. I mean, I'm not a big fan of cash, to be honest with you. And if we do a petty cash fund, we have to have very strong controls and oversight over those cash funds. So what I'd like to do, as opposed to credit cards or purchase cards or all that, that's even on another level, is request to have a policy established that will enable the districts, by approval by the school committee, to set up petty cash funds for individual groups or needs that would come before you and you would approve it. The petty cash policy would basically be set up approved by the school committee with a not to exceed balance. And each fund may have a different need. And we'd have a not to exceed request amount. I mean, if somebody's coming to a petty cash fund and requesting $500, we're not talking about petty cash anymore. So I know in this policy we set a not to exceed of $100. You will see after my finance subcommittee meeting some red language added to that, because it was recommended that maybe we give a little bit of flexibility on there. So on 2.2 that you were talking about, Tara, 2.1 actually, but 2.2, each request not to exceed $100, but I added the line, a higher dollar amount may be requested with prior approval from the superintendent or director of finance and operations. There may be a function that comes up that they're gonna need more than $100 to run out and buy some things. We'll just give some written approval for that before it's done, basically. And yes, we have it set up so all petty cash is going to be maintained at central office with the district accountant. The district accountant's kind of like the offshoot for the treasurer, so she's all things cash. So that cash funds will be set up at the central office, maintained in our safe at the central office. There'll be a process for the individuals to come in, request the cash, sign out the cash. There'll be a form that'll be signed. They'll utilize the cash as they see fit, return with any change and receipts, make sure everything balances, signatures will be taken. So everything lines up. When the auditors come in and say, what do you got for petty cash? We can hand them all the information and it's all right there and everything ties. The problem we run into is when petty cash goes missing. So we don't want that to happen. Basically, and then the rest of it just kind of goes through some of the details. Some of the, one of the other areas we added was number 6, which was reimbursements. The district's policy right now is individuals cannot go out and just spend their own money, come back and say, I need to be reimbursed for this. They need a written approval to do something like that. And the reason for that to happen is we need to make sure that the funds are available for the purchase they're making through our warrant process. But we also understand that there are times where reimbursements have to be done. There are organizations that don't take a PO. They don't do those things. So with approval from myself or my office or the superintendent, we can't allow these reimbursements to take place. That's not to say that if there's a school dance and they took out the $100 petty cash, something happens and the $100 wasn't enough, but it was an urgent need that had to be fulfilled, that they can't come in and state their case, basically. And if it's legitimate and it makes sense and it's reasonable, then of course people are going to get reimbursed. The whole point is we don't want individuals to have to spend their own money to support the school district. The school district is funded, and it's funded adequately, we'll say. I won't say well, but adequately. There shouldn't be a need to spend your own money. And also, we don't reimburse tax. So if somebody goes out and pays with their own funds and gets taxed on it, we do not pay tax. So they lose that money. And that's also something that nobody should be doing. You shouldn't be eating your own funds. So with that, I'm asking that we add this policy, petty cash policy, to our policy manual, and we can go forward with it and put these in place.
I just had one question, Joe, on 2.3.
Yes.
Do we need to add, if the district accountant isn't available, do we need to add you on there as somebody who can disperse the money just in this policy?
Sure, we could do that if you want.
I know you guys do the writing, the request of writing.
Yep.
But I'm just thinking, if they need that cash and you want to get away with not reimbursement, and she's not there, we need a second person to
So you just want
disperse
to be
it.
explicit that they could come to myself?
Yeah,
if
I
we-
just
okay.
want it, if the district accountant is not available, that there's a backup that they go to.
Okay.
Can I make a motion to approve
Do we also have to
the change?
decide today on the 1.2? I believe that's where we had to figure out a dollar amount.
That's going to be based upon each request, so it could be different. Like I have 3 requests for you right after if this policy passes and it's approved, I have 3 requests. So each one of those requests has a different not to exceed amount.
And then, will we let students at the high school level make these requests, or does this have to come? I'm just thinking like the class officers, like the senior class. If they are setting up a fundraiser or whatever and they need popcorn to
Do they
sell
have,
it.
they each have an advisor?
They all have advisors, but
I
does it
think
have to
I
come
think
from
it
the
would be good
advisor
for the
or?
advisor to do it with them.
Yeah.
You know, just so there's an adult.
I just
'cause
thought it would be good
we
for the
want that
students to see
adult to
the
sign off.
process
Yep.
too, though.
We should add that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The advisor needs
Add
to
the
do the
advisor,
request.
okay.
But get back to 1.2, but the petty cash fund shall not exceed a balance of,
Yeah.
I think we need to put an overall amount on that tonight.
No, my point
Why not?
was that, and that's why I have it in brackets set by school committee for each petty cash fund approved. So, for example, I'm gonna ask for a petty cash fund for student activity fund tonight, and I'm gonna ask for a balance not to exceed $1,500.
Okay, so you're gonna
Do it
that
as we
separate.
do each fund, because
Okay.
each fund has they're gonna have different
misunderstanding.
needs.
Joe, are you going to be asking for those petty cash accounts in this segment of the meeting?
I would like to if I could.
Okay.
Yeah. If this gets approved. If it's not approved, then we'll have to table it. obviously.
So, right, so we'd have to approve this. Let me ask you this. Are the 3 petty cash accounts you're going to ask to set up tonight?
Yes.
Are you going to ask for all of them to be $1,500?
No.
Okay.
But they're real quick. They'll be really quick.
Well, the policy then,
To
all right,
approve the policy.
this is the policy is going to leave that should not exceed a balance of, well, if is the highest one going to be 1,500?
Yes.
Okay, so we
No
can,
more than?
yeah, so it shall not exceed a balance of 1,500.
Okay.
That'll cover all 3 of them.
And we'll put that right in
And
the
the
policy.
discretion will be, if the other one's gonna be 500 or 750 or what have you.
Yep.
That is, as long as it's not exceeding 1,500, we're covered.
Okay. That's easy.
So I'll put the number in 1,500 for the purpose of the discussion and the vote. So if that's clarified, are you all set with this aspect of this policy?
I am, as long as if it's okay with what I'll add for language that you're requesting, I'll add that and I'll send it out to everybody.
Sure. And so with the 1,500 in essentially 2.3, the district accountant or a designee,
Yep.
is there anything else?
And then adding the,
Advisor.
yeah.
Oh, cash,
So
yeah.
probably 2.1, I think that's probably where they'd buy an advisor.
Submitted in writing, yeah, so I guess you'd have, who can make these requests would be
Yep.
the leaders or advisors of such subgroups.
Could it be coaches too? Would we have any need for coaches to take cash?
Well, you have,
Are they considered an advisor?
you have 3, there's gonna be 3 petty cash.
There's only gonna be
accounts.
3 right
So
now.
what are they?
They'd have to get approval for another.
What are the accounts?
One is gonna be for special ed for the life skills program.
And who would be usually making that request?
It'd probably be Jen or Jill or Jen.
Okay,
And then central office for $300.
and that would be,
That would just be central, be myself, basically.
okay,
To the district accountant, if we need stamps,
Yeah.
things like that. And then the student activities account, I was gonna do for $1,500.
and that would be, student activities would include what groups?
Any programs that are under the student activity clubs, which would be the different clubs at the high school, middle school, and the elementary school that on their individual checkbooks.
Okay, so there's the request would have to come from advisors or
That's correct.
directors
Right.
of those clubs or
Coaches. Or coaches.
coaches, correct, yep. So that's good?
Yeah.
With those amendments, is everybody good? So I'll take a motion to approve the petty cash policy.
So moved.
Motion made by Matt, seconded by Tara. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
So with that, do we need to go through and approve the three I just mentioned?
I'll put them out, yeah, well, I'll take a motion to approve the three petty cash accounts.
Thank you.
As described by Joe.
So moved.
Second.
Not to exceed 1,500 for each anyone. Motion by Kerry, seconded by Matt. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Graduation policy.
Yeah. Do you want to see that, Matt?
Yeah, so with the recent vote in November in the state of in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we were left with, I put it as a crisis as far as graduation requirements, MCAS no longer being a requirement, and where do we go from there? So we were leaning on that. So we set out to come up with, I guess we're calling it a bridge requirement for now, so that way we can satisfy, the requirements for graduation this year, most immediately. And then the policy subcommittee will be working on a more broad requirement down the road. So I'll let Jason take it from there.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so as Matt shared, with the elimination of the competency determination, which is the requirement from this Commonwealth of Massachusetts, essentially to show competency through passing the MCAS for ELA, math, and science by 10th grade. With the vote, the competency determination can no longer be required by MCAS, so we had to come up with another way to do that. And so we were left kind of struggling to figure out, what would be put in place for this year, knowing that long-term we will be assembling, have already actually started, but assembling a graduation requirement policy committee to really work on some language long-term that can look at things outside of the, what's in our current policy, but also be thinking about service learning and some, community service type projects, internships, et cetera. So that's kind of long-term where we're going, but what's in front of us tonight is really kind of catering or geared toward those couple of students who didn't pass the MCAS, because we still have a few, and that is no longer an acceptable competency determination. I'm using the term competency determination because that's what's in the state law. The way the state law was written in 2001 is that kids have to show competency, students have to show competency of grade 10 standards as it relates to math, science, and ELA, and those were measured by passing the MCAS. So the law still stands. We have to show competency, but we can no longer use the MCAS to do that. So what is in front of the school committee this evening as a draft policy essentially just outlines the fact that we can determine competency determination for grades 10 ELA math and science standards by our students successfully passing the courses that we listed here. I don't want to confuse this with graduation requirements because those are actually above and beyond this. So there's kind of two steps in this process for our students. One is proving competency, which now, and again, the law is really clear. Until that law changes by the legislator, it needs to be done by grade 10. So essentially, there's kind of a check and review on the 10th grade standards. Very specifically, what are the skills, concepts that students would acquire in grades 9 ELA, grade 10 ELA, Algebra 1 and geometry, and biophysics or chem. And so we don't offer physics anymore at the younger grade levels, but we included it because it is a potential course that kids can show that they've met that competency determination by passing. So we now have gone through the process of looking at all of our students and making sure that our students have successfully met those, at this point, those competency determinations. That's step one. Step two is meeting the mass core standards and expectations. That's the other half of the graduation requirement. So that part didn't change. So right now, I believe we have 2 students. One student was not on this track to begin with, and wouldn't have shown competency through passing the MCAS. And then the other student will be able to work with that student through some type of a coursework portfolio to ensure that they get a diploma and not a certificate of completion. Those are actually significantly different things. A diploma puts a student on track for, post-higher education, 2-year, 4-year, or a certificate of attendance or certificate of completion will give students access to a 2-year school only. We have language for discussion this evening for the school committee to take a look at. This is just listed as a discussion item for tonight because we know it's a really important topic, and the committee, like we've done with other, big issues, we'll come back to at a later meeting to have a follow-up conversation. One of the things I just want to draw to your attention is I think it's important, and we discussed with Jill PG, particularly for our students who go into a more restrictive special education pathway like our Essentials program, which would not be on a diploma track. And that isn't new, but ensuring that through the team process that those parents not only understand, they get the pathway, they understand the diploma versus the certificate of completion, but also acknowledge that in writing, saying that they understand, the kind of the 2 differences in the pathway that their child is on. And again, that's a very small number of students, but I just want to bring that to your attention. Matt, did I miss anything on that?
No, that was spot.
I'm sorry. Any comments or questions?
Yes. I have a couple.
Sure.
So this second page, the policy, is that in addition to the first page or replacing it?
Yes, great question, Tara. Thank you for that. So it wouldn't be replacing it. The first page outlines the Mass Core requirements. This would address the competency. And we may need to call it like IKF.
That's what I was wondering.
I don't
if it
know, like I'm
needs
not
okay.
good with naming the policies themselves. I don't know how that works, but we'd have to figure out what letter goes next to the.
This is specifically for this year, this school
Yes,
year?
yeah.
Yeah.
And until the policy committee would approve a permanent policy to bring forward to the school committee for review and approval.
And so this, right now, it's 2 students?
It's looking like it's about 2 kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just there's a typo on the second paragraph.
Thank you.
I think it should just be score, not scores, while it's open. So then you just said that's only for this year, so
Yeah,
For
so
the graduating class of
like
20.
Jason said, we're looking to put together a committee of students and educators to come up with something that kind of makes sense for our district. I will say, through our discussions, it sounds like we're light years ahead of any other district in the state doing this. A lot of them, it's, Jason can speak more to this. It sounds like they're not doing anything. Nobody's doing anything.
No, they're waiting for the Department of Education basically to give them guidance. And we need to get ahead of it because we have students that they need to graduate. So we can't wait for them to do that. So this will ensure that our class of 25 kids are taken care of.
And then moving forward, would we be looking for a policy that kind of marries these 2 pages together into one?
I think so, and I think we're also looking to kind of blow that out a little bit and talk about, for instance, like community service. How can our students,
we've talked about a lot of different angles that we, that could
give back to our community?
correct indicate a student is ready to graduate. The great thing about this not having MCAS, I know that a lot of people are, don't like that we don't have MCAS, but this gives BMR SD the ability to do what's right for the BMR school district, not what's right for the Wellesley School District or whatever other school district. So this will be right for Blackstone. We'll be able to compete within our area, and drive more success that way. That's how I see it.
And Matt, to that point, if I may, I think it's important to also note because we're looking at file IKF as well, our graduation requirements, less than half of the districts in the Commonwealth actually adopted Mass Core, which is a far more rigorous set of expectations. So I put our schools up against anybody. Our graduation requirements are far more rigorous than over half of, at least on policy on paper, than the other high schools across the Commonwealth. So this would get the checks and balances in place for both the competency determination until the legislator changes that, and the graduation requirements would remain, Tara, to your point, would remain in place for Mass Core.
What's the ideal time you'd like to get this approved?
Probably come back at the February meeting if that works.
Yeah, we wanted to bring this to you, this meeting, so we could have this discussion and update you on, what's going on elsewhere. And then bring this back on
If this comes
February.
back in February, is it gonna be any alterations to it? Or
Not unless the committee has any feedback
maybe.
for us, right?
no?
It's just for that, for this graduating class, so it's what's on here.
Yeah.
It is for right now. Now,
Yeah.
I
Nothing
want to make
changed.
sure to,
Yes.
it could be that the work group that we have on the overall graduation requirements, they may come to the policy subcommittee and say, we need more time. Like, we're looking for more time. We're not going to be ready to have all these provisions in place by next school year. I'm not sure yet, but
But I think to Dan's question is, this is going to be the policy that we're going to use for this year.
yes, yep.
Right.
So if we have our conversation tonight, do we need to bring it to the February 6th meeting?
We can vote on it tonight
We
if you
make
want.
yeah.
Yeah, it's up to the committee.
We can just call it IKF 2025. That way there's, because we know we're gonna add, it's gonna be amended once it's permanent, because you're gonna take the language out of 2025, so. But
For the following policy to then affect class of 26 and beyond, would we need to vote that in prior to the start of that school year?
Well,
Like, are we looking at that short of a window to?
what might happen is there could be a process where we phase that in, right? So like the policy might read, I'm making this up, but starting with the class of 2030. That sounds crazy, but like it might read like starting with the class of 2030. These are the requirements that need to be in place, and something like this IKF 2025 or whatever we call
Whatever,
it
yeah.
might be what's in place until we start rolling in that new. I think there has to be like a transition period we're going to have to kind of think through. And then whatever legislative changes, if they scrap this competency determination requirement altogether, like we're going to have to keep, it's like any other policy, we're going to have to keep coming back to the drawing board. But yeah, there may need to be a transition or like a phase-in process to it. Because that wouldn't be fair to the class of
Well, to just suddenly be
right,
like you.
26.
Yeah,
Surprise.
quick, get working.
We also could build a policy that breaks down for 26, we're going to
Correct.
add this piece.
Because-
For 20, right?
Say for the 10th graders this year, after the 9th and forward, they're not going to have any issue because there is none. So,
Yeah.
granted, the 10th grade, I think did 10th grade already take the MCAS that would have indicated?
No, they'll be taking that in
That would
March.
in the spring, right?
Yep, we had the
Yeah.
retakes. For the
So,
upperclassmen.
so it could be 10th grade and on, that, this is really 11th and 12th grade that are.
That kind of need that bridge policy.
Yeah.
Correct.
And to confirm, they're still taking MCAS.
They
They
are.
just don't count
Correct.
as graduation.
Yep.
Okay. Just so people are aware. I think some people might think they voted to get rid of MCAS.
No,
But
no.
it's not really gone.
And that's federally required.
Right.
That's a federal requirement.
So whatever the pleasure is, the board, we can adopt this tonight. Can always come back with revision.
Can we vote on it if it's a discussion item?
Yeah,
Can
we
we
can
choose
vote
to?
on any agenda item. Or we can bring it back on the 6th. You feel comfortable?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
perfectly
what we
comfortable,
want.
so I'll make a motion to accept file IKF 2025, we want to call it, tentatively. Or, how should I say it? I'll make a motion to accept the graduation requirements
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Matt, seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? I just want to thank you for the policy subcommittee and administration for getting ahead of this. You know, this vote was from November 5th, so we're probably going to be one of the first ones.
We are.
Yeah. Something in writing on this matter, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Student Council Overnight Conference.
Actually, we heard Maya talk about this earlier. So this is their request from the school committee because it's an overnight. They go every year to Hyannis for this conference. It's at the same place, but they've renamed it. It's where the school committee and superintendent conference is at Cape Cod Irish Village in Hyannis.
Any oh,
I was just gonna make a motion.
Sure.
I make a motion to approve the Student Council Spring Conference.
Motion made by Tara. Did you second it? Seconded by Tara. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I have a question too.
Go ahead.
With student and advisor driving, is that reimbursable? And whatnot, if we're not providing transportation?
Yeah, what is
Taking that van?
Go ahead.
They did request the van.
Oh, okay.
They requested the use of our van, so we're seeing if we can make that work for them.
If not, the mileage. Joe, what's the mileage? 79 cents? 71 cents? Something
I'm
like
not
that?
sure off the top of my head what it's changed to in January. I think it's somewhere in that area.
You have to take it out of petty cash.
You were not
Raise that
for that.
Being reimbursed, show that receipt.
Yeah.
I just, as I said with the previous trips, to Spain and France, my main concern is the one chaperone for the students. I still think that we should be looking at, as a district, we should be looking at, both for the chaperone's sake and for the student's sake, to increase that number. God forbid something happens to the lone chaperone, and now we have 4 to 8 students who are on the Cape, in Spain and France, without any sort of someone local to them. I understand when they go to Spain and France, that's a different story. We already voted on that. But they have no one. They're down on the Cape. Yes, they have phones. They have all that, but they have no one immediate. So we should have more than one.
Sure.
Going forward. I think it's just something we should consider. Maybe a policy needs to.
And I'm sure we can get a second staff that would go in that.
Either that or I'm going to have a rotating school committee member attend.
I'll take a trip down to DC
Well, I was
if
gonna
anybody
say, I'm
wants
putting
to
in for
send
the
me to
France and
DC.
Spain trip then,
Yeah.
if we're choosing.
I'd
where
take the
we wanna
DC if you want to
go.
take Spain. I'm all set with Europe.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
This
Okay.
is high school, right? So what, 9 through 12, or do we know who's going? Like, what-
Yeah, the 8th graders are not attending this.
No, so 9 through 12. We'll make up that group.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
70
I'll abstain on that.
70 cents.
Matt abstained.
I'm not abstaining. Let the record show, 7. 6. I didn't hear what Joe said, so I'm just winging it.
6-0-1.
All right. Moving on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you. This evening, we have our, just a few things under my update. The first is an overview of our initial FY26 budget. I'll give Tim just a second to pull that up. Do I have oh, there it is. Dan, would you mind handing me that?
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So as the school committee and our community knows, we've started our budget process earlier in the fall. And we were here in December to talk about what we were forecasting as the main drivers of the budget, but also ensuring that our fiscal plan matches the educational plan, and thinking about what are the resources and supports that our students and staff need. So of course, all this is driven by our improvement strategy. The feedback and guiding structures through our blueprint, which is our district strategy itself, our detailed strategy, our MCAS and accountability results, which we'll talk about very quickly this evening, because those are very much a driver of this. The school committee feedback through my evaluation, which is very important, and our community feedback through our student, staff, and family surveys, which I know we had a chance to look at that, I believe, in September. So lots of information has gone into really driving the overall needs of the budget. This year, as we do every year, just to kind of quickly touch on who we are supporting through our budget. This is our current student demographic, our student enrollment. These numbers change daily. We listed approximately 1,500. We've been up to 1,520. We've been down to 1,505, back up to 1,510. Our enrollment is constantly changing with students either moving out or moving in. Our demographics haven't changed significantly. As you can see here, these are very similar to last year's. We are still around 3.2% of our students are English language learners, just under 8% their first language is not English, just under 20% students with special needs, and then our high needs numbers are still just about half. Again, just as a reminder, the high needs are students who qualify for any state benefits or economically disadvantaged, but also are students with special needs and or English language learners. So it's that kind of combination of which encompasses about half of our students. Our overall state data, just to touch on some of these quickly, we are making moderate progress towards our goals, which is great to see. None of our schools are required any level of state assistance, and we certainly would expect that to be the case. Our graduation rate is just about 92%. Our dropout rate is just over 1%. And then you can see where our meeting and exceeding numbers for grades 3 through 8 ELA, math, fall compared to the state. Again, we're either just at or just below state averages in all these areas. You will see that our grades 5 and 8 for science also we made some gains this year. You can see the high school scores as well. Again, right within striking distance to the state. Something to identify, all of our science achievement scores exceeded what the state set for us for targets. All of our schools exceeded the absenteeism rates. We're making tremendous progress with our community, getting our kids to school on time. And all of our schools exceeded the targets set for our ELL, English language acquisition targets. So you can see as a district, we are doing incredibly well. Again, keeping that graduation rate strong, over 90%, that dropout rate really small. Our achievement rates right at where the state is. Of course, we want to be higher than that. We're still working on our core instruction, as everybody knows. That's regularly kind of tuning into our work. But even with that, the targets that the Department of Education are setting, we are exceeding many of them. So really good news as far as the success of the school system. And that's a big shout out to our teachers in our classrooms and to our educators supporting them, our principals, and to our families. So what's driving the budget? A few things. And I just want to touch on these. And again, we went through this in December, but a couple I want to bring to your attention. Looking at our enrollment doesn't reflect it because our enrollment are the October 1st numbers. So I just want to draw that to your attention. The enrollment that is listed here is the October 1 certification number from October 2024. This changes all the time. We are seeing from October to now, frankly, the start of the school year, an increase in our English language learners who need additional supports, an increase in students who are placed out of district. So for instance, we may have a family that moves from Northbridge, but their child is already placed in an out-of-district setting. This year, we are not required, this year being the current school year, we are not required to pay for that out-of-district placement, but the following school year, that becomes our responsibility fiscally and programmatically.
For some,
Yeah.
For some, it's right away.
So we're seeing an increase in students moving into the district who are in out-of-district placements. Jill, I don't know if you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, and we'll get into it significantly in the budget, but more specifics. But we've had this year, it's been a large population of the students who are moving in are already placed elsewhere before coming here. So we've had several students. We've worked really hard over the years to bring that number down, and we've actually had, I think, and I'll go through the numbers, but maybe a little bit under half of the students that are there have not been placed by us. But when they move into the district, depending on the kind of program there are, sometimes that fiscal responsibility kicks in immediately, and sometimes it is until next year. So that definitely has an impact on our budget.
And when we do the special education budget workshop, we'll get into the weeds of that.
Absolutely.
Next year, we'll be implementing a new 3-year strategic plan. Really excited to share that we're thinking end of February, early March. We'll be bringing it to the community. We'll be having a few community forums to get feedback on the strategy, to get direct information back from not just our families, but also our local businesses, municipalities, to really get a sense if they feel that this school is, with the revised strategy, is moving in the right direction. If not, what direction would like to see the school district move in? We are just about there in terms of getting feedback from the staff currently. So once we get something a little better cooked, we're going to bring it to the community and to our parents for feedback. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, we're working through refining our literacy program. That is the content area that is up for review and renewal this year. As you know, we have a curriculum review cycle. It is looking like at this point, again, we will be replacing our grades 6 through 8 core literacy program. And part of that was through the reconfiguration of the schools and kind of the redistricting of the grade levels and where they went. We want to ensure that we have alignment between our secondary grades, so like grades 6 through 12, and currently our elementary program, which is PK through grade 5, looking like it will have no changes. So we're hoping that the changes there will be minimal as far as core programming. But in addition, we have a really strong writing committee that is working to establish some writing expectations, PK through 12, to ensure that our students are writing up to very high standards. So sure that as we're going through the budget cycle, you'll hear from members of our literacy committee that will come to the school committee, as they normally do throughout this work, to share updates. And then, of course, the implementation of a revised capital plan. And we'll talk a little about that tonight, too. Joe, do you want to touch on
Sure.
some other drivers?
Some of the other driving factors, like we did discuss in December already, is health insurance increases. A quick example of that, and I'll get into more detail when we actually start going through the line items of the budget. Our health insurance assumptions that we're assuming for our working rates for next year is going up 11%. And that's with a recommendation from Maya, our carrier, to use 15%, but we are going out to bid, so we're hoping to get that rate down on the cost of the districts. And just as Jill and the superintendent mentioned too, our collaborative and private school tuition, they're increasing, annual cost increase that are built in, plus the enrollments that are happening. A perfect example is, since this budget, the draft budget was prepared just this past week, 2 kids came into district. And those 2 kids alone next year are going to cost $343,000 a year because they're already outplaced. It's very fluid. It's constantly moving, and we do our best. Then the facility needs is driving it. Obviously with the high school and the condition it's in, the repairs and maintenance are getting to be more and more. We're trying to stay ahead of things now as opposed to being reactive to any issues that come up. Hopefully, with the new school building going in, we can make that happen as quickly as possible because that'll minimize some of that. Then there's some short-term capital needs that we have also that'll be brought forward in detail when we start to look at the budget also. Faculty and staff contractual obligations, obviously that's a big number. 80% of our budget is salary and benefits. I mean, that's what we do. Minimal local contributions is an issue. It continuously increases to the towns because the revenue provided by the state is not increasing adequately. And our transportation costs, use of transportation, but also just the contractual obligation we have in our contracts for the rates that are going up.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
An important, just a reminder of FY25. As we know, that was a very challenging budget cycle for a lot of reasons, but I think there was a lot of really good work done. and I want to highlight some of that. Something Joe mentioned already in the prior slide, this idea of minimum local contribution. Just as a reminder to our family and friends tuning in at home, that is what the state says the town of Blackstone and the town of Millville has to pay the school system. And so last year, the state told Blackstone, you need to pay the school system $341 more than you did the prior year. So that was a 6.83% increase over FY24. And they said similarly to Millville, you need to pay $134,626 more than the year prior, which was a 5.5% increase. The reason this is so, and you can see the cost of both towns was just under $700,000. The reason this is such a significant piece for us is because we as a school district are left looking at that number and saying, how do we find a way to absorb some of this? Because the towns can't afford to pay this extra, plus all the additional that we know is required to run the school system. When you look at the Chapter 70 increase, so this is what the state said, okay, Blackstone and Millville, you have to pay the school system $678,697 more dollars, but we'll give you $94,000 more to help. So the math isn't mathing, so to speak, on that. And the rest is left for us to figure out how do we either reduce the budget to try to absorb some of that and make our budget be able to support the needs of our students and staff, but also have a number that the towns can support as well. So these are the FY25 numbers. It's important to just take a look back. As Joe mentioned, we will have, the governor has to release her budget Wednesday, I think it's January 22nd this year. So we should have the first kind of swipe at what those numbers will look like as far as revenues to the school system and what the cost of the school system will be through charter school and school choice and those areas. But some other important information. One of the things we did last year to help offset those costs and to offset the reduction in revenue, which we all remember well, that loss of revenue through circuit breaker and through our ESSER dollars, was to reduce the budget through consolidating our schools and reconfiguring our grade levels. That came at a total savings of about $2.3 million. So we were able to get the budget down about $2.3 million to help offset those costs of the towns. But I want to just underscore that a large piece of this was the consolidation of staff and resources. We're not going to have that this year. So I just want to make sure to mention that up front, to those that are tuning in at home. And also want to thank the communities again for their support through that process. There was a lot of work that went into that. Joe?
For the capital assessments for each of the towns, this is the debt that's currently in place only. It does not include any short-term funding for the $500,000 that was approved for each by the towns for the feasibility study that's happening now. We're in the process now of getting that funding in place so we can have it up before the towns and the committee for approval in the certified budget, so we make sure that number is there. We did see a retirement of about $3.1 million for the middle school bond that was retired as of August 2024. So with that, the total principal and interest for FY26 for Blackstone currently is $250,000. And to Millville, it's $133,809 for a total of $383,810. That retirement of the middle school bond represents about $168,000 a month that was split between the two towns that isn't coming into here. But our other capital needs will probably come in to fill that gap because we have quite a few needs in the district, the capital needs that will come forward to you.
So the short version of that, Joe, the middle school's paid off.
That's correct.
Which is good news as we're looking at a feasibility study for the high school.
I'd just like to add that this also is typical, this is aside from the budget. These numbers are results of previous town meeting votes for
Yes.
commercial, capital upgrades, whether it be the town-owned buildings or the district-owned buildings. So these are, although it's part of the budgeting, it's not part of the educational budget. And these are town meeting votes from 10 10 years ago. Thank you.
And Joe, do you want to walk us through the overview of the draft proposed FY26 budget?
Sure, I'll be going through this document that's right here. And I'll just really focus on the changes and why it's changed, but a couple of assumptions that are built into this budget. Like I said, the medical is assuming an 11% increase. And life insurance, we're assuming an 8% increase. The retiree portion is almost 20% because they went up on our retiree funding, and the Fed set that number. We have no control over that at all. And a lot of what you're going to see here is a restructuring, aside from those increases, a restructuring of the function codes. So there's a lot of ups and downs in each one of these function code lines, but we need to make sure that our function codes line up to the DESI requirements. So things were budgeted in places that were kind of weren't lining up, so I made sure that happened for this budget. So starting with the school committee, the function code 1,110, you see a reduction of about $31,000. That's basically because we no longer utilize the CPA firm that we were using before in place of not having a finance director. And I've also moved the expected moving costs of putting our kids back in Millville Elementary into that line under school committee as opposed to where it was before. So the net effect of that was a $31,000 reduction. Superintendent's office, which is 1210. That also was a movement of, we had to take the E-rate consultant out of that line and put it into 1410 where it belonged. And a lot of the PD was booked at each one of these departments. DESI requires that to go into function code 2351. So really, it's just a movement of that, those funds to different lines. The other thing to keep in mind too is salaries. Medicare was budgeted, but it was budgeted into each individual salary line. DESI requires Medicare to be budgeted under its own line, 5100 series. So a lot of that takes count too. You're taking a salary cost with Medicare, comparing it to a salary cost without Medicare, and obviously you're going to see a reduction there. 1220 is leadership and student services. We had some administrative assistants that were budgeted into a 1230 code. They need to be put back into this leadership line to 1220 where they belong. Business office is a reduction of about $9,200. The HR specialist also needs to be in its own line, which is 1420 coming up next. And salaries no longer include the Medicare. And when we hired our district accountant, there was a administrative assistant position that was absorbed by that. So that kind of accounts for that reduction. The human resources line of 1420 is just a brand new line. Like I said, that came out of business office to create that new line for $78,000. Legal services, we've level funded, no increase or decrease, projecting to be on target with that. Information management. Another issue where we had some of our IT staff, 3 IT staff were budgeted into this line. They need to be moved down to a technology line of 4,400 by DESI requirements. So that's the reason for that reduction. School curriculum leaders, we're in the phase of renewing, looking at our literacy curriculum and doing a renewal of that or an update of that for $150,000. And then from there, we also moved some staff evaluation stipends out of this line into where it belonged with 2120. So that's the reason for that increase. The increase there is about $120,000. Department heads, again, that's a new line where we want to make sure our team leaders and chairs are in the correct line that DESI requires. So that came from other multiple function codes to create this new line for $106,000. School leadership for the buildings, that's the principals and their staff. It's basically what you're seeing here is just mainly step movement, and there are some supply increase requests that are above and beyond what we had in the past. We'll go into the weeds of that during our work groups to look at each one of those requests to make sure that that's something we want to do. You're going to look at classroom teachers next, and that's 2305 and 2310. The previous budget budgeted most of our staffing under 2305, which is regular ed teachers. And we have 2310, which is special ed teachers. There just had to be a shift to make sure we had all our special ed teachers in the right line and our regular ed teachers in the other line. So that's why you'll see the $440,000 increase in regular ed and a $479,000 decrease in special. It's just a shift. But in here also are requests for 5 new positions, 3 at the high school, 2 at the elementary level, which again, during our budget workshops, we'll be able to go and look at those requests, but they are reflected here. 2320 is medical and therapeutic services. We've moved our nursing contract with Bayada Nurse from 2310 into this line. We added a BCBA, I believe, in FY25, so that's kind of driving some of that added cost. Includes title fund requests and some supplies and materials that are being requested too. Again, during the budget workshops, we'll be able to look at those. Substitute teachers. One thing I've found is when they're called fill-ins here, but we call them coverages. When a teacher's out, other teachers will cover or fill in for that teacher when they need to, or other staff members. We've moved them into that substitute line because in a sense, they're acting as a substitute at that point in time. They used to be charged right to their salary line, but we brought them down here so we can get a true reading of what it costs to cover teachers when they're out of the classroom. Instructional assistants is 2330. We moved an instructional assistant from speech from 2320 where it belonged, and the rest of it is just really the step movement for those individuals and the contractual increases that were settled on the new CBA that's in there. So that's what reflects that increase. Library and media specialist. We had an increase in requests for library books, which is good. So that's in here. And we've moved some library activity and personnel out of where they were into that library line to make sure it's complete. So that drives that increase. Professional development, you're going to see a decrease. I found that the summer program, the teachers for the summer program were budgeted in this line previously. They were moved where they belonged into 2305 for the summer program. And that's that decrease. Textbooks, there were various supply lines in here that weren't really textbooks. They needed to be where they're supposed to be in their supply lines. So that was just a move of those requests where they belong, and that's driving that decrease of $49,000 there. Let's see, classroom supply, instructional equipment, 2420. That's just a new, the $6,000 increase is just a new request for instructional equipment. And again, during the workshop, we can go through each one of those. Classroom supplies, same thing. Each school and each department have put in a lot of requests for additional supplies and materials. We're going to have to go through each one of those. It's pretty extensive in some cases, just to make sure they're legit, and that's what the school committee wants to do. Other instructional services, we've added some before-school tutoring, and I've also moved the CCLC coordinator budget into this line because it really is other instructional service. It's not really an educational service built into the classroom. Instructional hardware increase, that's where, let's see, make sure I'm looking at the right line. That's where we're seeing some special ed requests for new educational platforms, some of those platforms that were in there, so we'll look at those during the budget workshop. Guidance and adjustment counselors. I did find that some of the guidance counselors were budgeted in other lines, so I moved them where they belonged. And there was an adjustment counselor that we had to put into this line also. And that's really what's driving that increase that you see in there. And there's some added PD that they're requesting that we'll look at also at the workshops. And psychological services, really it's just mainly due to step movement for them. There is an ESY psychologist that I put into this line to make sure it lines up where it belongs. The medical and health services, this is basically the nursing services. We've added an ESY nurse. There is a request for a new LPN. I believe it's a part-time LPN that's in here. And there's a request for additional AEDs, 8 of them. With the purchase of those 8 AEDs, I think that completely refurbishes all the AEDs in the district at this point in time. So, but again, we can look at that during the workshop. Transportation services, You're going to see that increase is driven a lot by the collaborative requirements that we have. These kids that are coming into school that we need to transport, we have no choice to do for those transportations. Plus, there's contractual agreements, like I said before. The contracts are to have small increases built into the rates that they're using. Athletics has gone up. It's projected to go up about 71,000. There's a request for an athletic trainer. We're hoping that that move actually will be a net almost zero move, because we'll eliminate some of the services that we're getting individually one-off that trainer will take on. The employee coaches were not normally budgeted here. The coaches that are our employees were budgeted under the salary line for their salary. They really should, that separate stipend should be down here with the coaches. So that's driving some of that too. And there is a request for a new coach, and all the coaches, we made an assumption that they all stepped up in level. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, but you plan conservatively and make it happen, and hopefully maybe it won't. Other student activities, that's a line, the 3520. That's all the clubs, the advisors, the extracurricular music, were all put into this line now where they belong. That's the student activity accounts we just talked about. This is where that funding will be placed. Custodial services. Basically with that, it's just we use the CPI, or a consumer price index, of about 3%. We took our needs, went through it with Scott, and we said, okay, we're going to just put an increase of about 3% on the cost of all this equipment, all these materials. So it's a 3% increase. Heating of buildings of 4120. We see a substantial decrease in the cost of oil with our FREC membership. It's gone down quite a bit, and there'll be a slight reduction in propane. So we're hopefully going to see a $46,000 savings there. Utility services is showing about a $35,000 savings. We just did a lot of electrical upgrades here. We're hoping those efficiencies are going to pan out and show up. And based on the savings we'll have from that, we should see a savings in our budget. Maintenance of grounds is the same thing as with the custodial services, a 3% increase over our anticipated costs. Maintenance of buildings, that $51,000 is driven mainly by the MES, the Millville move used to be budgeted here at $50,000. We've moved $40,000 into the school committee line at 1110. That's really the majority of that. Building security system, 4225, now including the rave panic button costs, and there's an increase in the resource officer. I don't know if I believe we might have had one resource officer before. Now there's two.
The detail.
The detail. Yep. So now that's driving that cost up.
There.
Maintenance of equipment is mainly, it's minimal. It's $6,800 increase, but that's really just a shift of the function codes, what belongs there versus somewhere else. Technology infrastructure, those 3 IT staff that I was talking about that reduced the line for $1,400 up the top, this is where they came into to drive that increase. It's about, I just want to say, as this is a draft, I did find a duplicate too. So the next iteration of this budget, if there's any errors or duplicates in the budget, those will be removed. Retirement. This is where Medicare is. This is where it belongs. It's $5,100. We budget Medicare here, and we also budget our Worcester County retirement in this line. So that's driving that increase of $236,000. It's all pulled out of salaries and all placed here under retirement. Insurance, active employees. One thing I found in past is insurance for active and retirees, just one lump sum number in one account. DESI requires it to be broken out. Active should be $5,200. Retirees should be $5,250. So it's really a function of moving those retirees out of the active line into the retiree line. So you see a slight decrease there, even with the 11%. One thing I'd like to point out is our system allows us to build assumptions in the system itself, as opposed to doing it outside in a spreadsheet. We can take the actual employees that have whatever medical coverage they have, for example, in the different working rates, put that 11% assumption to it, and tell the system, what is it gonna cost us next year for these individuals? And that's exactly what we're using here. So a lot of this could be a comparison between how it was budgeted in '25 versus how we're budgeting it now to produce maybe some savings. And it seems to be happening with our insurance overall. Retirees, brand new line. Like I said, that's medical, dental, and life insurance costs for retirees, $692,000. Other non-employee insurance, that's our property and liability and our student accident insurance. The increase is because the property and liability was moved out of that insurance line into this line. And previously, what was budgeted here was only the student accident insurance in '25. So you're gonna see a big increase there. School choice and charter school. All we can do at this point in time until we get our hard numbers, hopefully in January, at the end of January. I took our FY '25 projected for both, added a 4% increase to it to come up with a number that we could use in our current budget. The reality is we'll see what the state gives us when the time comes. Out-of-state tuition and the non-public school tuition, again, driven by Jill's office. This is just what's projected. I do want, like I said, I do want to mention the non-public schools, the 9,300. It says 702,000 here. Just this week, we brought in over $343,000 with 2 more kids. So that puts it over $1 million right now. And the collaborative, again, is just the projected requirements of these kids coming into the district that are already placed in collaborative placements. We're looking at about a $205,000 increase. So this budget right now as a draft is $2,732,689 or $690,000 over what we requested for last year. I'd be happy to try to answer any question. I know it's a lot of information, and I'm sure it'll be a lot more fun when we start to get into the weeds during the workshops.
And if I could just quickly add on, we know there's a lot of work to do here, which is the same case for every year. So we're really eager to get to the workshops and start getting a number that meets the needs of our students and staff and community, and it's something that the towns can support. So we got a lot of work ahead of us.
I just want to say thank you, Joe, for shifting things where they need to be, fixing it up.
Okay. Yeah, next year will be easier.
I'll say that, I'll agree with Tara. Joe has been slowly moving things over. We still have a couple of things
Sure.
coming up, right, with the budget journal. Cleaning that up every few weeks. We get to watch that in process. Any other questions? This is kind of our budget kickoff discussion, and it only gets more fun from here.
This was a really good explanation, though, seeing
Yes.
function
Yeah.
code, how it,
I hope so. I wasn't sure if it would be clear enough.
that helped.
Is it me or is there less? Does it seem like there's less?
There was less to look at, but more explanation, and I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yes. Yeah.
Oh, good, I'm glad. 'Cause
Yes,
this is a new
okay.
process for me, too. I usually
Yeah.
do it a little differently in the system, but this is good.
All right, and next we have select and approve budget workshop dates.
Yes, so there are dates listed on your agenda. We can take the first date right off, because 1/13, we wouldn't have enough time to post the agenda for Monday.
Excellent.
So we can take that off. So we have 1/21, 1/22, 1/27, 1/28, and February 3rd. Lots of coordination between school building committee, teacher negotiations, regular school committee meetings, budget timeline and next steps, which is up here on the slide, slide 11. So
You can
I
take,
know it's,
you can take 121 down. There's a special town meeting in Blackstone that night.
all right,
I have a conflict that night, too.
okay.
Yeah, you're gonna be at the special town meeting, I hope.
Maybe. Yes, that's it.
So we're at 122, 127, 128, and 2-3. We normally will book for sure 2, and sometimes we'll hold a third date. But it may be that we want to book 2 and hold the other 2. We might want to book them all and then not, only use them if we need them. It's up to the committee.
What time were we looking at for these meetings?
7
Just
a.m.
7 a.m.?
No.
Perfect. That
That's
works.
even easier.
Actually, that would work.
You tell us where, I mean, where, in the past, we've done all kinds of different things. We've done earlier starts, we've done later starts. We've done all sort of things. We've stuck to 6 o'clock, whatever. It's at the pleasure of the committee.
5 is probably earliest for me.
And 6 o'clock's not very ideal for me.
5:30.
You tell us.
I could make 122 and 127.
122 is a personal conflict, a winter concert.
What time? Do you know? No.
No,
It's 7, right? Is it a school concert?
Yeah.
Aren't they usually at 7?
7. But I have other conflicts that night.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm good for 122, 127, or 23.
I'm good.
can do all 4.
127 and 23.
Me too. I can do that.
127 and 2-3.
So far,
2-3 if we did it like 6:30 instead of.
I'm good on 128 as well.
I'm good with that time on 2-3.
2,
2,
3,
3 doesn't matter.
6:30.
Time as long as it's after 4:30, I'm good.
6:30.
Conflicts on 128 unless we move the time sooner.
We didn't have any objection on 27.
127, I think we were all good with.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's
Time on
2 of them. So you want to stick it, keep it at 6:30? 6:30?
Yeah, whatever you all prefer.
That's fine.
The first one, you want to start a little earlier because it's
On the
Oh.
27th?
on the 27th? Yeah, like 6 o'clock or
I can do any time on the 27th.
Me too.
Yep. 5:30?
5:30?
Earlier the better. If
5:30.
Is that too early?
5:30, does that work for people?
5 o'clock? 5 o'clock?
5?
I can't make 5.
Who can do 5?
I don't know if I
Going
can do 5
once.
either. 5:30.
5:30?
Back down to 7 a.m. No time.
That'd be good.
So we got 2 here then. 127 at 5:30 and 2-3 at 6:30.
That's great.
On 127, we could pick more dates if we need to.
Was 122 out
Was
for
2,
more
3
than one
clear
person?
for everybody?
Yep. 2, 3.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well,
We could.
Matt
we,
was
what
out.
we,
yeah.
we could try, because we have a full school committee meeting on 2/6. So we could do a lot of things. We could, if the committee's okay, we could have longer workshops and try to get, like, we could do all the school-based and athletics and music in one. And then we could do all of the district, like facilities and capital, and they just would be longer, but we could do 2. And then we could look at, I saw your eyes, Matt. It might be too long,
Really
but
long.
just try to work with the time we have.
Yeah, no, it's
Because the goal would be to get the school committee to a comfortable place prior to February, that February break, because usually the week after, we meet with the joint meeting with the boards of selectmen and finance committees.
What did we say about 121?
Town meeting, no good.
Town meeting, so that's out.
We've done this in the past too, just something to think about. We've taken the February school committee meeting and we've turned that into a workshop. And then we've held a separate February meeting the following week. That's just something else to think about. If you wanted to take, like if you wanted to look at 127, 2-3, and then 2-6, we could do that as workshops. And then we could, you could move the formal school committee meeting to the next week. We've done things like that before too.
All right.
So just different options. I'm just looking at my calendar here. But we could start with these 2, and
Yeah,
if we're
start
comfortable
with
having
these 2.
longer meetings, do that too.
Did we've ruled out the 28th? Did that one come up?
I couldn't make the
Okay.
28th, but that's,
Neither
But
could
we
I.
can.
oh, okay.
28th is out.
So Matt, you're the only one on the 22nd?
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
if it's,
I mean, but,
depending on the time, I mean, well, no, I'm out. Actually, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I still have something after.
well, we got 2 that we all agree to until we hear from Erin.
And I could always meet with you, Matt, to go
Yeah.
through all the material first and get your feedback and share it with
That's the one on the 22nd?
on the 22nd, if that was something you all wanted to do.
It's up to you.
I'm
Matt.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
We can meet during the day.
Everybody else
Yeah.
is good with the
Yeah.
22nd?
It spreads them
Yeah.
out a little
Yeah.
better that way too.
So 122, and then I'll meet with Matt during the day and get all of his feedback on the.
22 at 5:30?
At 5:30, perfect.
Ted? Yeah.
So then is 2-3 still 6:30? Sorry.
2, 3, yeah, so 122 and 127 are at 5:30, and 2, 3 is at 6:30.
Okay.
I mean, if you all prefer 5:30, I'll just come in a little late to that one. What?
You said it was better for you too?
Yeah, 6:30 is probably good on that one. Yeah.
I'll send calendar invites to everybody. so
Sure.
you get it on the calendar. And I'll run these, I'll share these with Erin too, so she has them. That's great. And then, so we'll determine a meeting for the joint meeting of the boards of selectmen and finance subcommittees. Governor's budget should be out January 22nd, which we'll then get our hands on at least the first cherry sheets to look at what the revenues and the receipts will look like. Public hearing for FY26 will be on March 6th. And then, assuming that is certified that evening and we're in a good place, we'll start the budget book production on March 10th. So we have a very busy January and February, as always.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Concludes my report.
We will move on back to Joe in the business office.
You have the personnel changes for January that are just to be placed on file. The expenditure report you have before you, there's been some changes. Every month, things go up and down as we see things in movie. You can see the salary line has changed a little bit. But one of the bigger changes I want to mention is our charter school sending and receiving. The state comes up and they reassess the allocation that's to the town, to the district, and they've increased our cost of the sending tuition by $30,000, but they've also increased the tuition side of it that we'll be receiving by almost $30,000. So the net effect is minimal. I don't foresee any issues as far as budget overrun. I think we're going to end in a good place. Just as a point of disclosure, end of January is the halfway mark for the school year. That's where I'm starting to put together schedules now, where I'm actually going to be projecting out expenditures for a lot of, for example, transportation, out-of-district placements that we were just talking about. Really, what is that number going to look like? We can't just assume we're going to spend everything. Are we going to spend it all? Are we going to overrun? I'll be able to give a little bit better, more accurate disclosure on that at our next meeting.
We are not going to overrun.
We are not. We can't. It's not even possible. The system won't allow it. So, unless there's any questions, that's all I had for that one.
Okay.
And as usual, these are the budget journal entry report that I did. I've highlighted in yellow the items that may be changing in function code, because that's what really needs the approval. Most of what you're seeing here is we've amended, done a lot of amendments to our grants. And those amendments basically are, you'll budget for a grant expecting to spend the funding in a certain way. The reality of how you spend that during the year changes. So we go through, we get an amendment, and we get approval for those amendments to move the money where it needs to go, to represent how we're really spending those funds. That's the majority of what you see here. Plus, in addition, you're going to see a lot of movement. When 8th grade moved up to the high school, that 8th grade budget stayed at the middle school. So the district accountant took some time to go through that 8th grade budget and find out what portion of it belonged with the high school, and we made that move into the high school so they had access to those funds. And that's really it for that.
Any questions? I'll take a motion to approve the adjustments in the journal entries. Motion made by Tara. Second by Chuck. Joe, thank you for your continued efforts on this.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Facilities report.
Good evening. Hello. So on December 23rd, both boilers at the high school shut down. Industrial burner came in, they had to change the gas solenoid on boiler number 2. Boiler number 1 had reached a high water limit sensor, which did not allow the boiler to fire up. Both boilers were put in back to service on the 23rd. However, on the 24th, Joe Mullally, the head custodian, came in, discovered water all over the boiler floor, the boiler room floor. And that water produced steam, which shorted out the motor on boiler 2. Boiler 2 had no power whatsoever going to it. So that motor was shorted out. Was discovered that the hot water pressure relief valve on the hot water tank was defective, which spilled the water all over the floor, causing the steam. So that needed to be changed. We had to put a rush on that in order to reopen on time, January 2nd. So on December 30th, they came in, they got that running, we got hot water again. Boiler number 1 is running. The motor for boiler 2 is sent out to be rebuilt. I was hoping to have it back this week, however, they called me today, and we will not see that until Tuesday, the 14th. Right now, boiler 1's running. It's a little sketchy. 9 out of 10 times it'll start up. That one time it won't. We'll have to come in and reset it. I currently have my alarm set for 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and 5 a.m. to make sure it is running. We don't want to freeze any pipes or anything, so. So hopefully Tuesday that's back up and running, and then they will look further into boiler number 1 to find out what the issues are. Right now, it's running. We don't want to play around with it. It's not a problem. Every time we reset it, it fires back up. So it's an electrical issue somewhere. So that's that. January 5th, the boys' basketball team was in practicing. They were low on one of the backboards. One of the pins for that backboard popped out. Rod came flying down, hit the window, did not shatter the window, thank God. So I was able to just put a reinforced hardened steel bolt in there, and then I checked every single backboard to make sure we didn't have this issue anywhere else. And there's no issues that I could see. Not sure how that pin even came out, but. So that was addressed. Middle school, the sprinkler system, they did get the gauges. I put it off till February vacation, so that would not interfere with learning. Over break, they did several more floor tiles in the cafeteria. You know, as you know, they're lifting it up, causing a tripping hazard, so custodians replaced several floor tiles, and they repainted most of the lobby walls. JFK, update on the septic system, that was repaired and is back up and running normally, so no further issues with that. During the holiday break, several plumbing issues were addressed at the JFK school as well. And the Millville Elementary School, we put a new timer on the outdoor lighting, so we can now control when the lights come on and off over there. We don't have to do it manually anymore, which with basketball going on there now, it's a perk. And also the generator has a couple of small pinholes in the radiator. It's quite significant to replace the radiator, so we're getting more quotes, and we're also looking at the possibility of just having that one taken out and repaired. Whatever we find most feasible. And that is what I have for facility reports. Questions, concerns?
Said it didn't smash the windows, but it didn't break the window, right?
Just put like a little chip in it. So hopefully the sun doesn't hit it or something, and it heats up and expands.
Thank God. Window replacement's at least $5,000 because of asbestos.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Feasibility study. They're coming Friday.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Start getting on the site.
Looking forward to that. And again, like Joe said, with the increase in the budget, you know, all these issues, the boiler systems and whatnot. I know, like everybody else, my taxes went up, but we need a new school.
All right, any questions? Scott, thank you. Thank you very much, Scott.
You're welcome.
Facilities, use of facilities requests. Looks like we have a couple, one from the Knights of Columbus and one from the music program.
We did look at the facilities calendars, there's no issues with conflicts. There was the Knights of Columbus, usually the boys' basketball team practices to 6:30 PM, but they were willing to give it up that half hour. So Knights of Columbus can come in at 6.
In the junior high concert, Scott, are we doing these one at a time?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have any?
I just had a question on the junior
Sure.
high, a comment on it. I know they're gonna be there from 8 to 6, and I guess there's about 500 people that are gonna be in attendance. We were talking today about probably should have a custodian or somebody on staff during that. I know it's a group one, there's no charge, so we're not gonna charge them for it. I mean, the district would have to be willing to pay that fee, I guess, but I think it's probably a good idea to have somebody on staff during that, if we can find somebody that'd be willing.
I'm gonna get the name of it wrong, but it's the,
Micah?
yeah, it's the Micah.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
hosting
we gotta, yeah,
We-
yeah, yeah.
we're
the
hosting
host,
it. Yeah, we're hosting it this
Yeah,
year.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I hope it's Micah. I hope I have
Yeah,
it
yeah,
right, but it's
yeah.
one of the big.
Yeah,
Like,
I got
No,
you.
that's
regional
right,
band.
that's what raised the
And
question
all day,
when
I
I was
was,
talking
I
to
had
Scott.
It's all- yeah,
So that's
it's
a
a big-
long concert.
Yeah.
Why would you-
yeah, we don't do concerts and.
What is junior high? Is that middle school or? I thought they were going to Bellingham.
they usually do it at Micah's at Bellingham.
We're hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last year we hosted the chorus. You might remember the
That's what that
chorus version of this here.
Yeah,
Right.
This year we're doing the band.
yeah, definitely a custodian, obviously. It's a 10-hour,
Yeah.
10-hour operation there.
We'll schedule somebody.
But Scott, you wanna volunteer though?
I'm out of town that
This
day.
is what Dan gets to volunteer as a school committee member.
He's salary.
As long as they bring out a trombone, I'll be out there. I mean,
Believe it or not, I am out of town that day.
Oh, well,
Literally.
Aw,
convenient.
shucks.
Sorry.
Oh, that's right, I had to give you a hand that day.
Oh, thank you. That sounds fun.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the use of facilities requests.
So
moved.
with his suggestion.
The administration will be providing a custodian for the
Custodian, yep.
event, correct?
Yes.
At the expense of the district because we are hosting it. Okay, motion made by Chuck,
Second.
seconded by Tara? Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. School committee forum. Anyone?
Say thank you to the parents that did come out tonight to voice their opinions. It's not easy to get up and speak in front of anyone, really, especially on such a passionate topic. I hope that we can have a more broad and just a civilized conversation going forward.
Okay.
Leading up to our February 6th meeting. Now I'm done.
Okay, I'm sorry. You paused for too long for me. I'm
Sorry.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? I also thank you. I'll say this to anyone that gets up in front of any public forum. It does take courage to stand up for what you believe, and I appreciate that, as the young ladies did the last meeting, advocating for their time in the cheerleading as well. So I thank those who showed up tonight. And with that being said, I will take, if no one else has anything to add, our next meeting is, school committee meeting is February 6th. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Kerry, seconded by Tara. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.